Okay, so now on this video, we are going to start putting together many of the things that we've talked about individually in the other videos leading up to this point. And you've got the lay of the land, an overview of the interface, and kind of how the different parts of it work. So we're going to do a full project here. And this bracket that you see, I need to cut some of those to for a real job for a customer of mine that I've already cut many of, and they need about 8 more of them. So just a simple little thing, but can show you how to walk through the entire process of getting this cut. If you're trying to cut a full sheet of something, you'll want to nest, and right here in the nesting part of it, which we'll cover in a future video. But if you just need to cut 8 of something simple, or 5 or 10 out of a little drop or part of a little corner of a sheet, then you don't really need to go into nesting. It's complicated and there's more to it, and this is quick and easy. So to show you this, I'm just going to delete this and we're going to re-import it. And so again, we're going to go up here to File, we're going to go Import, we're going to go DXF, that's going to bring up our list, and this file is called BottomCap. Again, I'm using this evaluation software to do the screen capture on a separate PC, not my live machine. And for some reason, the scaling is off on this when I import something. This thing should be about 3 inches by 4 inches, and it's coming up scaled off. So this is good because it's just going to allow us to show you the scaling again. So we're going to click Scale over here and bring up the scaling menu. And I'm going to just, it's not really that critical for what we're doing here. On the machine, I'm going to open it and scale it correctly before it cuts. But this setup part is going to be identical to that. So we're going to rescale this at 3 inches by 4.65 inches, and we now have our newly scaled part. So before you duplicate this to create more than one of them, you want to do all your lead-ins and micro joining and anything like that to the individual part. So there's a few things that we want to do this before we create the array. One thing I didn't show you yet is you may want to orient this in a different way. So if you highlight it so that everything is selected and then go up to the transform menu, you get some options here that you can mirror it, a vertical or horizontal mirror. You can rotate it, things like that. And a common thing to do is just a 180 rotate to flip it around, or a 45 rotate. You can also click the rotate menu in general and freeform rotate it, and you pick the axis that you want to rotate it on, and then grab it and rotate it wherever you want it to be off of that, and pick the rotation point, and then just leave it. But if you ever rotate that and then rotate something else, and then you needed to get this back to square in some way, there's no good way to do that. Once you sort of freeform rotate it, the only way to get it back is just to undo it, and get it back to a square position. But, so you got the transform menu, and you got some options there that you can play around with, 90 degrees clockwise, 90 degrees counterclockwise. And, again, the 180 degree is a common one, 90 and 180. So just go ahead and get it rotated or oriented in the way you want it before you duplicate it or array it. So I'm going to put that back in that position. So here's something that you may commonly want to do. Let's just say that if we go up to scale, we can see that this hole is a clearance hole for a 5/8 bolt, and it's 0.66 inches. And let's just say that you wanted that hole to be a little bit bigger. Let's just say we wanted it to be 0.7 to give us a little bit more wiggle room. And if I just click 0.7 and click OK, and if you watch the actual hole, you're going to see that it offset it to the right and down. So let me undo that again and go back to scale. And you want to use this area right here if you're going to scale a bolt hole, to make sure that you scale it from the center so that it keeps the center line of the hole, or the center point of the hole, will stay the same, and it will enlarge outside the center. And let's make it bigger so we can see that actually in action better. So I'm just going to say 1 inch, and I'm going to leave it in the top left so we can see. You see how it's now offset it, from the part. And we'll go back again, and we'll make it 1 inch and then say center. And now you see it's centered up, but just a lot bigger. All right, so that's something that you can do, on the fly if you're doing a small job and you forgot to do it in cam or things like that. So one other thing that I haven't shown you here is that when you that by default SIP cut does not offset for the kerf. And when you're cutting thin materials, the kerf is so tiny that it doesn't really matter. You can cut 20 gauge and not have to compensate or offset anything. Just open it up and cut it and let it cut. You don't even have to do leads. But on thicker materials, if you want to get a hole dimensionally correct, you need to compensate for the kerf or offset for the kerf. So we're going to highlight the part. And I'm going to bring this where it's up here close. And if you notice up here, there's the compensate button. And it brings up a dialog box. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Over time, what you're going to learn is for a given thickness of material, for a given nozzle size, how much do I need to offset it? Maybe you would want to offset the inside only, or maybe you'd want to inside holes or offset holes only, that kind of thing. But let's just say we want to do a 0.010 offset. Again, your laser head, the thickness of material, all those kind of things are going to play a factor, and you're going to have to do your own experimenting, cutting some sample parts to figure out what is the correct offset to get the part to be dimensionally correct. All right. So you see when we click that, if you zoom in here, you'll see that now we have a slight offset. It's going to cut the inside features to offset to the inside, and it's going to cut the outside features offset to the outside. The white line being the cut line and the green line being the original, design of the part. So again, before you do any duplicating of the part, go ahead and do your offset. The next thing you might want to do is put a lead in and a lead out. So we've already talked about this a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and set the leads on this. And we have an arc 45 degree lead, and it's 0.2 inches. And I'm going to come down here and check outer contour only. And this will save us a little bit of time. So we're just going to click that, and bam, there's our outer. And I'm going to click lead again, and I'm going to uncheck the outer and check the inner. And I'm going to go up here and make this a line lead at 90 degrees. And I'm going to make it half the dimension of the feature. We know that hole is 0.66. I'm going to make this point. I'll just make it 0.3 to get it pretty close to the center. And bam, there's our lead for the center. So now we've done all of our work to the individual part, and we know we want to cut 8 of them. So again, you want to highlight the part so it's selected, and you want to come up here to the array tool. And if you've used any other CAD or CAM software and you know about arrays and so forth, you know how to do it. We want 8 of these, so we're just going to make it an equal 4 and 4. And right here you can set the the row and column interval or offset for how far apart you want these to be spaced. And normally these are going to be cut out a 1/4 inch, so I use 0.2 on 1/4 inch. It's pretty safe to use the thickness of the material as your offset amount. And here you can pick the direction. I found these things not to really matter, with the way the machine works. It doesn't really matter which way it arrays it, because you're going to cut it from the origin point down here to left and right based on how your machine's origin set up. And that's it. You just click OK, and there's our 4x4 arrays. You can see our lead ends are in a good spot. They're right in the middle of the, it's going to pierce in the middle of the open area by an amount that's safe. And, and so we're good to go from there. And one thing I haven't shown you yet is the sort order. Again, if you're just cutting simple things, it's probably not going to matter. And when we get over to showing you the nesting, there's a separate sort, method over there. But let me just show you the options on this. You got several predefined, options that you can do. And there are some best practices on this, and some schools of thought about which way is best, of what the choices are. But I'm just going to say bottom to top. And if you want to do a simulation to see how that's going to work, you can grab this little slider here and see it simulating. See it's going left to right, bottom to top, and zigzagging back and forth for the cut. And then if we were to change this left to right and then do it again on the simulation, you'll say now it's going to go up and over and down from left to right. After that, we're going to go pick on our layers. And if you've got a predefined layer already set up, you want to go right here to this little open folder, and it's going to give you a warning telling you that if you read this, it's going to blow away your current settings, and you say yes. You go and find we're going to cut this at 1/4 inch or 6 millimeter using oxygen, and we're going to pick that and open it, and bam, it's going to bring in our settings. And from that, we're going to flip over to the machine, and I'm going to show you a little bit more about the positioning and the setup, and we're going to cut this job. Okay, so we've got a drop setup that we want to cut those parts out of that we went through on the simulation software to show you all the details of the features. I had to change the nesting around on the production machine out here a little bit to fit that drop. So from here, just like we showed you there, we're going to click on the layers. That's going to bring up the dialog box. We're going to go right here and open our folder, and it's going to give us the warning message. And from here, we want to pick on our 1/4 inch oxygen and say OK. Now we've got our layer opened up for that. And again, this is a really good dialed in connection set of parameters to cut this with, and you'll be getting a copy of that when you buy the video series. So from here, we can check to see if this will fit our drop. But it's kind of tricky with an odd size drop, because if you just do the frame command like we showed you in the other video about the remote, well, you'll see that it'll frame it out off the drop. So I'm going to hit frame here. Well, you can't frame it without the... If you ever hit a button on the remote and it's not acting right and not accepting the input, it means you have something open on the screen. So let's go back and hit our frame button here. See, it frames it off outside the screen. So what we need to do is a dry run, but we don't want to do a dry run at the speed that we normally would cut 1/4 inch at. So real quickly, we're going to go into our layers, and we're going to go right here to the speed. And I'm going to make this 300. You got to remember to set this back before you do the cut. And we're going to do a quick dry run just to look at it and make sure it's going to cut that on the sheet where we want it. So dry cut right here instead of frame. So we're fitting that all in. And we're going to maximize our drop and use almost all of it. You know, it being an odd size drop. So we're working out well. Got 2 more to do up here. And you see nowhere did the shutter go off the edge. So we're ready to cut that now. And I am going to turn the shutter off, because it, as we showed you in the earlier part of the video, it won't cut with that on. And from here, you want to return to 0. So it puts the machine back where we left it. And we want to go and go back into the layers and change our speed back. 52. And we are ready to cut the job. So let's get it fired up and cut it. We're going to cycle start it and watch it cut. Now that piercing routine, I'm going to have a dedicated video in your series here but you're going to watch a little bit later on how to dial in your pierces for thicker materials. But you can see we're getting some good cuts there, and we'll let those cut and wrap it up here at the end of the video when they get done. All right, you see we maximized our drop and got pretty much everything we could out of that. And there's our parts. Got nice cut on those. And so just a quick review, we walked you through doing an import of a drawing, scaling the drawing. We talked about transforming the drawing, rotating it, and then we set our individual leads, compensation, offset, all those kinds of things at the individual level. And then we went into our array tool and arrayed the parts in a grid, and then framed it out and cut it. Start to finish, an entire small production run of a job, cutting a few parts out of a drop.